support me. It was my birthday today, so I thank them very much for being here. So this is my wife, Sarah,
Sarah.
my youngest daughter, Juliet, and her bear. Okay, shine now. And this is my oldest daughter, Lillian. So they are my friends, my family, my support, my best cheerleaders, all of them. And if you guys want to go get bagels, you're allowed to go next. What?
They were about 20 minutes.
It's up to you. You do what you want to do.
Oh, now, yeah, you.
Yeah.
That back
I
hand's
said-
been opened?
Yeah. I said the magic word. All right. So in terms of format for today and what we're going to be going over, obviously this is us. I was told pretty much we do whatever we want to do to try and introduce ourselves, talk about ourselves, share bits of our history and story. I'm looking forward to doing that with all of you. And I know I am at risk of sounding like a bit of a one-trick pony, a single note thing, but I do want to have some time spent on the transgender thing. If you don't want to hear that, I apologize. You know where the doors are. And I won't do that for the whole time, but it was Transgender Day of Remembrance. Thank you to everyone who came to the service. And it has been a very big focus in my life in the last year. Given some recent events in the national and global landscape, it's something that is a rather significant issue for me. And I look for opportunities to advocate, just to educate, to let people know what it's like. Because I feel that we care about what we understand, and we can relate best with people that we really know. So just to pull the audience, no wrong answers here. I'm just curious for my own education. How many people here actually do know somebody who is transgender in your life, who's not me? 1, 2, 3, 4. Good, impressive. How many of you know somebody in your life who's transgender who you feel close enough to that you can ask a lot of really personal and invasive questions? 1. 3. Awesome, fantastic. So for those of you who don't, I want to have that opportunity for you today. I have very low boundaries when it comes to education. If people have questions, they're genuinely curious, they want to know things, I will go into anything. So don't feel like you're going to offend me, my morals, my sense of self-value. If you ask a question that's really entirely too personal, I will let you know gently. Yeah, that one's a line too far. I haven't hit that line yet. No one has yet given me a question. I'm like, you know what? I can't answer that. And again, this is a question of history. So I want this to be interactive. If you guys want to know, what's your favorite pizza topping? I'll get my favorite pizza topping. I don't care. But I do have, for my purposes, a little bit of an agenda at the beginning. And I'm going to kind of open that up with a letter I'm planning to send to my father's family later this week. So I'm going to use you guys as kind of a sample run here to see how you go with it. So you pretend you're in my family. I'm assuming that they're going to have a lot of questions because people have a lot of questions. So as I'm reading, yes.
So are they unaware of
Yes.
absolute? Okay.
Yes. Yes, absolutely unaware. They are. Okay, so to put this in context, my father is the third out of 8 brothers and 1 sister. She is the youngest.
Wow.
And I am the oldest of 34 cousins on that side of the family.
Oh, good
So it is
heavens.
a large collective of people, all of whom have either known me my entire life or their entire lives, one of the two. So it's a big thing. They're having a Christmas party this year. We missed Christmas last year because there was just a lot of scheduling issues that came up. But so a lot of them have not seen me in 2 years. I look a little bit different now than I did 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm planning on sending this letter out so that before the Christmas party, they are all not blindsided by something they have no idea is coming. So from that context, you're all my family. You've known me for years and years and years. At least you think you do. And you're going to come see me at Christmas time, but I've got something new to tell you. So put that hat on and see what you think. If you have any questions that come up, I'm asking you, please write those down. I've got note cards, pencils around. Not necessarily, and you can ask me questions directly too. I don't mind. But this is, again, for my use. If I have questions that other people have written down, I can go back later and go, okay, I got to know how to answer that one. Oh, that's a good one I should prepare an answer for. So when I get there, I'd be like, I know what I'm getting into, as opposed to, I don't know what they're going to ask. So you're helping me out, and hopefully I'm also helping you get to know me better. So I appreciate your engagement with the process, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, I will read my introductory letter, and we'll get into some questions in history and go from there. Greetings, dear family. I don't know what time it is when you are reading this, but for me it's morning. While some of you have already heard directly from me, I wish to make myself known to you all in my own words and as altogether as I'm able. You have all been my family for years, up to your entire lives, or mine at 45 years. It's safe to say you're quite familiar with me. You all have stories and memories, some good, some bad, some happy, some sad, that I'm involved in. You may have known me as a nephew, a brother, a father, a son. You may know me to have a wry and witty sense of humor, an active mind, a voracious appetite for books, a degree of performative talent, a listening ear, or an encouraging word. All of those last are true, and always have been. The former, however, have always been in part a deception. And don't feel badly. I've not deceived anyone in malice. It's simply hard to be truer to others than you are to yourself. Over the last year and a half, I've been engaged in a significant consideration of who I am and what my life experiences show me of whom I've always been, despite my own protective ignorance. I have come to certain conclusions that I want to share with you before we all meet again for the holidays a few weeks away. I have always, from my earliest memories, considered myself to be a person to whom God gave a female spirit and a male body. I learned early that pretty much no one else felt this way, but I regarded this as just another way that I was special. And aren't we all raised to think we're special, exceptional, capable of anything we dream of in this family? However, I also learned that talking about it tended to make people uncomfortable and react negatively. So I learned very early to just not talk about it. It never went away. It just became more and more a background aspect of my character, a true fact about myself that had very little relevance in the face of my day-to-day life. Over the years, it came out in little and subtle, occasionally not so subtle ways, always in a ha ha, I'm just kidding sense to try and keep people feeling safe. Cross-dressing to go to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, always playing female characters in role-playing games, dancing the woman's part to the masochism tango with my brother at my wedding. But I never took it any further, and I didn't see how or why I would want to. Cross-dressing was never really satisfying. I knew innately I didn't really and couldn't really look like a proper woman with my proportions and my lack of salient attributes. My role-playing characters, especially online, had to be jealously guarded lest I be outed as a dude playing a girl, because then I would be treated like a dude, and that broke the whole experience for me, which was obviously, in retrospect, about being treated as a woman and not about whatever character I happened to take on in that setting. As for dancing with my brother, well, no, I got nothing there. I really have no interest in men, especially ones I'm related to. But it finally clicked for me at a presentation for Pride last year, discussing how to treat LGBTQIA plus individuals in the workplace, when I was exposed to the concept that gender and sex are not synonymous, even though I'd been raised, as many of you likely were as well, to feel that they were. And once that clicked, all the reasons I built up over the years that surely I must be male. Not only did I have the body, but I had no interest in other men as partners. I had no particular interest in surgically altering my body. And everything I learned as a mental health professional about transsexuals was that they were unable to receive such treatment unless they were so suicidally dysphoric that they would likely kill themselves otherwise. And they were willing to live completely as a member of the opposite sex for a year and demonstrated what would otherwise be homosexual attraction, because in the bad old days, it was considered that, at least a sex change would make your homosexuality heteronormal. All those reasons and others collapsed one by one. The more I read, the more I researched, the more I considered my own life experience, the more certain I became. Transgender was the word for what I am. And I finally started to understand. At first, I thought that this was an interesting thing to finally know about myself, but didn't really matter. I was, after all, special. All those other poor, suffering transgender folks, and I mean that sincerely, I truly felt badly about their suffering, obviously didn't have the resilience that I had, and they hadn't been able to hack it as their gender assigned at birth, where I made it over halfway through my life before I even caught on. Clearly, I was way out ahead. Obviously, I could just continue living the way I had been. Hadn't I been doing it for 44 years? No big deal. But my wife encouraged me to really explore this further and to ask the hard questions and do the hard things that seemed so easy. If you really think you're transgender, why don't you just paint your toenails and see how that feels? And I had to face my defenses square on as they tried to stop me from destroying my life. But guess what? I didn't. And the more I allowed myself to just be myself, the easier it became and the better I felt. And as I slowly came to realize just how much energy I had been spending guarding myself from exposure to myself, to protect me from inadvertently exposing myself to the world, I found it less and less desirable and maybe less and less possible to put myself back in that box, however much safer it might seem to be. I am transgender. It's part of who I am and who I've always been. I feel amazing finally really being myself for the first time. And I love how much closer I have grown to my wife and my children as I stop trying to be something I'm not and just embrace who I really am. I know a lot of you may have a lot of questions, and I welcome them. I've always enjoyed being an educator and acting as an educator and an advocate for a cause I passionately believe in. My right and the rights of those like me to not only survive, but to thrive in this world gives me a great joy, even when there's a lot of confusion, poor information, and if we're honest, in some cases, flat out disinformation shaping people's preconceptions. I'm happy to talk with any of you privately and answer any question you would like to ask. Please understand, however, that my identity is not up for debate. Sarah and I are more strongly committed to each other than ever, so you don't need to worry for us on that count. And despite the heightened rhetoric in the public space lately, I would encourage you not to focus on worry for what might be, but rather celebrate with me the joy and the freedom I now have. Being transgender is a strange and wonderful thing, and also just another way of being wholly, completely, boringly human. In conclusion, with sincere apologies for the years of unintentional deception, I am thrilled to finally be able to introduce myself to you. I am Jamie Michaela Hamelun, and I am your niece, your cousin, your aunt, your sister, or your daughter, and all those other things too. Love always, Jamie.
Anyone else? I'm with you too. That was so amazing.
So hopefully that's going to set the stage. So when I get to the Christmas party, there won't be as much. We'll see. See.
Do your parents know?
My parents, I told last November. I came out to them a year ago today, actually, on my birthday. Yeah. And they are not okay.
I'm so sorry.
They are not okay. But
They're probably waiting for you to change your mind and say, I made a mistake.
that
Yes.
is exactly
Yeah,
it.
I
Yeah.
understand that.
You know, anytime I try and talk with my mother, she quickly changes the subject and she'll tell me, well, I'm still processing. And that means I can't accept this and I'm just hoping this is all gonna blow over. This is a momentary thing. I tried to call her last week and let her know, okay, I'm filing the paperwork to change my name now because I gotta get this done before the government decides that we can't do that anymore. And
Yes, yeah.
so I wanted her to be the first to know my new name since it is so very close to the one that she gave me. And
What
I-
name were you born with?
James Michael.
Oh, James Michael
Yeah.
and Jamie Michaela.
Yep.
I missed that part. I'm
Yep.
sorry. I can't.
No, I did not. That's fine.
Okay.
And I want to honor her intention in giving me that name. I know she named me after her two favorite men in her life, my grandfather James and my father Michael. So I'm not trying to like spit in her face, be like, I don't need your name. And that is my name. That is who I am. It's just not quite.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Mhm.
And so, I put some thought into it and I decided to just basically keep it mostly the same, change a little bit at the end there. I threw an E on the end of Michael because my father's middle initial is E. So it's Michaela with the slightly off spelling because it makes sense. And neither one of them is going to care, but I tried. And all you can do is do your part. And sooner or later, hopefully people will catch up.
And you have a lot of siblings?
I personally have two siblings. I have one brother and a sister. My sister is very supportive. My brother has said that he's supportive, but my brother doesn't talk to anybody practically ever.
Mm.
So I don't actually really know. But I guess the practical upshot is his support or lack of support isn't going to make a whole lot of difference one way or the other. 'Cause he's not going to talk to anyone else anyway. So his position is kind of a non-factor in anyone else's reaction. So
So your sister will be at Christmas with you?
my sister will be at Christmas with me. My cousin, who is the first one in that side of the family, outside of my birth family, I came out to. She will be there with me. She's gonna be my wing girl. So she's just did a play in where's she at? She's at Coe College in Iowa, and they did a play called Girl Detective, which was all about exploring the Nancy Drew mystery novels from a queer lens, and what would it have been like if they had actually been, lesbian and not just close friends, because the author of the play had kind of always kind of headcanoned that, and it was really well done. I'm like, we came all the way to see this play, and this is so on point. I think this is a good time. And then this is the time. This is the right time, um, and that is honestly one of the things about this whole process that's been the most rewarding, is that I can just connect with people, and there's a lot more of a genuineness to it.
Yeah.
I will say, in general, the women take it better than the men do, but not always. One of the most interesting experiences I've had so far. I am a member of Masonic Lodge. I have been past master of the lodge twice. And this is on YouTube. Grandmaster, close your ears because I really don't want to get kicked out yet. But I did come out to the members of my lodge prior to recent events. And I was expecting, I just wanted to say flat out, I know this is a fraternity. This is a place where guys come to be guys with guys and learn about being better men. And I understand that where I'm sitting right now is not where that is. And if you guys would feel more comfortable not having someone identifying female in your space, I get it. I will support you in any way I can, but I don't fit. And I'm going to progressively fit less and less and less as time goes on. And they were all extremely supportive. They all said, no, you're going to stay here. You belong. This is your place.
Great.
That's really.
Really amazing.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Oh my God.
I mean, the most, that was first just the guys in the line, the ones I see on the most regular basis. But about 3 months after I spoke to them, the current Grandmaster of the state of Illinois issued a proclamation, which basically went out to every lodge in the state and says transgender people are not allowed. If you are transgender, you will be thrown out. If you are transgender and you apply, you will not be allowed in. This is not compatible with our understanding of the purpose of Masonry. So that is a ticking time bomb as soon as the Grandmaster finds out. And I am not being subtle. I'm not. I am who I am. If he doesn't want me, fine. But we had to read that out in lodge. I'm the lodge secretary, so I had to read that out in lodge. That was quite the day, and I talked ahead of time with the officers because they all knew where I was coming from. I'm like, all right, I will read this thing, but I want you guys to put the lodge at refreshment once I'm done reading it, and then I'm taking the floor and I'm lambasting this thing, and then we'll go back on the record so that none of that goes on the books. And they said, yeah, totally fine. But the best part about that, after I spent my 10 minutes ripping into this and describing exactly what I thought about why this was not really a good reflection of our Masonic principles as I understood them, and everyone kind of agreed with me, the two oldest men in the room, who had been Masons over 50 years, the guys who, when they heard that this letter came out 2 weeks previous, had been cracking jokes out in the lobby that, aha, you see what the Grandmaster said? You want to get your balls cut off, you can't be a Mason anymore. Isn't that funny? They were crying. And they're the ones who stood up and said, they're not kicking out anyone from our lodge. You are staying right here.
Do they have
So-
control?
No. No, if the Grand Lodge chooses to cancel my membership, they have no authority. Now, that doesn't mean I can't show up for weekly practices because we're not open. I can be there anyway. I could even show up on the night of a stated meeting as long as they don't actually let me in the lodge. If they let me in, they're now in violation and they can be sanctioned and they could, there could be a whole thing. Now, if they chose that as their means of passive resistance and asked me to participate in it, I would consider it. But that's not my call. That's not my fight. And as much as I have given 15 years of my life to that organization and was planning on giving it the rest of my life, if the organization doesn't want me, or if certain elements within the organization who currently have control don't want me, then we are back to that resistance piece again, right? You say this is wrong, this is why it's wrong. And you do what you can, but so that is an area of my life that I'm grieving right now because I will probably lose that. But that's the reality of the world we live in. So yeah.
Can I ask you a very practical
Please,
question? So how is like your understanding of God changing or changed, or can you talk a little bit about that? I think it's very practical.
Yeah, it is very practical, especially in a church setting. I don't know if I would say my understanding of God really has changed all that much. Again, even as a conservative Lutheran child raised in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, which is the more conservative of the Lutheran churches, even with that background, I was okay. I just again I felt very early that okay, the truth is I just have a girl's spirit. I feel like a girl inside. Clearly I'm not, but that's all right. That's a unique thing about me. That's kind of cool. I like it when people compliment my eyelashes. I like it when people like tussle my hair. I like it when people want to get hugs. I like all those girly things. I like playing with toys that are not swords and knives and soldiers. But my brother go out to the video store. He would rent Rambo First Blood Part 2 and Aliens. I would go to the family video store. I would rent Rainbow Bright and Strawberry Shortcake. So, but no, totally normal heterosexual male childhood. There were no signs. There were no signs. No.
And for Jamie's view of God's feminine
Yes.
qualities, tune in
Coming
during
up
our
in April.
spring adult
Yes.
formation when she's doing a session.
Yes. So,
On that.
so yeah, I always kind of had that.
Did you feel ever that there was, if God was somehow you were in conflict, or that? I think that's the question. I think some people feel judged, or their spirit feels oppressed, not by God,
Mhm.
right? So I guess that's what I'm.
No,
what I'm
again,
asking.
as a child, I actually had a very close relationship with God. I viewed prayer as more of a telephone call. You pick up and just talk about what happened in your day, and I would talk to God. I would talk to Jesus. I would sometimes ask God to put my grandma on the phone after she died because I would have that connection. I was very, very closely connected to God as a child. It didn't bother me that they had all this. Well, God is his father and he's got his son, and then there's a Holy Spirit. I'm like, well, I guess the Holy Spirit must be the girl then, because clearly there's a girl in there somewhere. She doesn't talk a whole lot, but women are off quiet in church. That makes sense. I get it. We're supposed to sit back and be quiet and let the men do all the talking. That works for me. It didn't bother me. I always regarded angels as being both genders, and the girl angels are the better ones, but I had that spiritual understanding, that religious framework that I felt like I fit in the system. It's fine. And whether that's just my little brain struggling to find a way to make me fit, or I don't know if it was theologically sound, but as a child, that's what I believe. As I got older, I did have more problems with the church. And it did eventually turn into having more of a problem with God. And it wasn't God's fault. It never is really, right? I mean, God's God. But increasingly I found that my beliefs and my attitudes were inconsistent with what was being presented to me in the church. And it got to the point where I felt like I could not in good conscience continue to say, I am a member of this. I subscribe to all these top level items that are what people who belong to this organization believe. As I started going down that list, more and more of them came. No, I really don't agree with that. No, I don't think gay people are going straight to hell. They're pretty nice people, actually, and God's supposed to be love, so why is he condemning them all? No, I don't think that if you have to have an abortion because your child is not viable, 'cause I've been there, you should be condemned to hell because you were trying not to prolong suffering. That's a terrible thing, right? We can't do that. And so as my personal ethics and morality became more nuanced, it was less and less consistent with what I saw in the church I was in. And eventually that led to me turning away from the church for a while. And I never stopped being Christian. I never stopped praying. I never stopped believing in God. But I definitely stopped going to church. I definitely stay, because before I left, there was a time there where I was going in every Sunday. Basically, I was listening to the sermon, and in my head, I was writing counterpoints to every point in the sermon. And I'm like, if I'm going to church to understand why I don't agree with what they're saying, and I'm not doing anything to change it. And I didn't. I definitely had a phase where my plan was, oh, okay, if I think it's broken, I should fix it. I was planning to go to seminary, become a pastor, and fix the church. And then eventually I got to the point where I realized that's way too big. I will push myself against that wall, and I will still be pushing 20 years later. Nothing will have happened, and I will be out of energy. That is not a thing that I can do.
Would you say the church?
Yeah.
Which church?
The Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod. Yeah. I actually went to an ELCA college, and that was better. But and when I got out of college, we came back here, went back to the church I'd been going to for 30 years before, 30 years, 20 years at that point before that. And you know, that never really went around and tried other churches. You know, you guys are right up the road here. I could have found you 20 years ago if I, well, 20 years ago, it sounds like this might not have been. the place
20
I
years
was.
ago would not have been a good
Not a
time
to be here,
Yeah.
but in general, the idea like Elvie was talking about last week, like doing some church shopping, and actually finding what other churches are like. We could have done it. I also probably could have gotten into therapy 20 years ago and figured myself out a whole lot faster. But again, my brain is very, for someone who lives a very liberal life, my brain is very conservative. Well, this is the way it's always been. This is good enough. This is it. What's wrong with it?
You seem like an organized multitasker, which is a very feminine quality.
Well, thank you. I
was just
appreciate
gonna
that.
Jamie, are you willing to be like the person who gets her foot in the door with a Masonic group?
Oh,
Are you willing to try to make that change for them?
Yeah, I mean, I am actually, I am joining the Order of Eastern Star tomorrow, which is the Masonic Women's Organization that's I think connected. I have talked with some of the members over there, and their grand line is willing and able to accept a transgender person. So they have assured me if I come in and I then transition later, they'll just work the paperwork, and all of a sudden I'll be female in the system and I'll be good. But because again, the system is old and outdated and not up to modern standards, shall we say, you cannot join unless you have a Masonic relative. Right now, I have a Masonic relative. So I can join as a Mason because I am currently a Mason. And then once I'm in, I'm on the books. And if I transition and they throw me out of the Masons, I can still be in the Eastern Star. But if I do it in the wrong order and I get thrown out of the Eastern Star for being a woman, or thrown out of Masons for being a woman and petition to join the Eastern Star as a woman, they'll tell me, well, you don't have any family, you can't come in. So
That's pretty.
yeah, so it's just getting, it's just like all the paperwork and the name change and everything else. You do everything in the right order and it works, but you have to know what that order is and plan it ahead. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about the, say, the fruitful tension between gender essentialism or gendered spaces,
Uh-huh.
but radical equality?
Oh, man, that's a big question. If I specifically have immediate thoughts on that, but just a gut response, you know.
That's one you gotta write that down. So you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I want to write
Yeah.
down.
So groups so groups that are specific.
Gender spaces.
Gendered spaces
Yeah.
for either, you know, connection points or because we're socialized.
Yeah.
Within a binary.
Mhm.
To have those traits that we described as male and female being socialized
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
I guess I'm also coming from a perspective of I'm not a gender essentialist.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
What is a gender essentialism?
That means it's a platonics, like it's a sense that there's actually that there exists somewhere out there an actual difference of male and female.
There is a
instead of
real
just
thing that is
humanness.
male. There's a real
Exactly.
thing that is just female.
Instead of just
Yeah.
humanness that expresses
There's a whole
itself in
gamut.
society and history and fashion.
Mhm.
And that the human creativity creates a binary
Mhm.
that we then perceive as essentialism or as real.
So philosophical.
Yep.
So-
it is very-
What is there a name for that? You said you
Yeah.
qualified it as
Gender-
non-gender essentialist, but is there a name for that?
That.
Yeah.
Non-gender.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think one of the interesting things with gender essentialism is that there is kind of globally this sense that there are, you know, there's male and female, there are these two separate things. but culturally within different cultures, what those mean
What that
is
means,
different things. So to the sense that is there an essential male or an essential female? Well, I guess if there's an essential American male versus an essential Maori male versus an essential Russian male versus an essential
Yeah.
Indian male, then yes, there are different things.
Yeah, cause
But-
in Italy, they dress baby boys in pink
Yep.
and
Yep.
baby girls in blue.
Yep.
Yeah.
And here in America in the 1920s, all kids were girls. There were no boys. It was
Right.
just girls. Doesn't matter what your gender is, you're a girl. So, I mean, it changes, it shifts based on your culture, based on your context. So the position that a given society has like these bookmarks, these mileposts, yeah, they all have them. But is there anything essential and you know, if you get down to the Jungian archetypes, is there an anima and an animus? I mean, I guess in a sense in that, you know, I have an internal sense of myself relative to the male and female standards of my society. But if I went off to Samoa, I might find that, you know, what the men are doing over here feels more comfortable to me. Now, I don't know of any societies that are like so completely topsy-turvy that, you know, I would actually feel like I really fit in. And all the other cultural pieces would definitely get in the way of really fitting in. But I think that radical acceptance piece, I think that is key. I think no matter where you are in the world, recognizing that these are constructs and they're useful constructs, they're valid constructs, they're things that help us identify who we are and understand ourselves. But they are, you know, mileposts to do that. And if where you are is somewhere neither, somewhere in the middle, somewhere orthogonally off in the distance, but you know where you are and you have the context to kind of speak about that and say, you know what, I really don't feel strongly all these things that are archetypically male in my society. I feel more of these, or I don't feel all female. I have like a blend in the middle, or you know, some days I'm over here, some days I'm over here. You know, but you know yourself and you have the language to articulate that to people in a way that they can go, oh, as soon as I recognize that these are like, you know, poles on a scale, and I'm just saying, you know, for me today, it's a boy mode day. For me today, it's a girl mode day. Oh, all right. I mean, it's not my personal experience, but it's something that other people can kind of get their heads around. And I think that makes a huge difference.
I think how you said mileposts to the point of expressing yourself,
Yeah.
moving toward your true self. I think that's a really powerful image.
Thank you. You have a question?
Of the preamble to the Declaration of Independence
Yes.
says all men are created equal.
Yep.
If you take that as properly as all people
Yep.
are created equal, all your issues and the issues of everybody else vanish.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they don't understand where that there's difficulty. Okay.
There's a lot of wisdom that sometimes gets lost in translation. That we don't understand the way language was used differently. Language use evolves. Like you're saying, when they wrote all men are created equal at that time period, men was the generic term for all humans, just like girl was the generic term for all children. I mean, the language had specified.
Explain what you mean, but I don't, not familiar with this. Idea.
And again, I'm not a history expert, so forgive me if I get something wrong, but my understanding is, at least in the Eastern Coast communities in the early 1900s, you know, the word girl, the term girl just meant a child. It didn't mean a female child specifically.
Like you had a girl kind of a thing.
Right, yeah. And again, like you talked about in Italy, they dress boys in pink. You know, when in America, they used to just, you know, gowns and robes and kind of like, you know,
Right.
the sackcloth kind of thing,
Yeah,
gender neutral, all the way up to like age 5, age 6, maybe you start getting some
Yeah.
cute little
Yeah,
bow
the-
ties and things at that point.
they're all in dresses.
But they're all, yeah. So that was, you know, and that was perfectly normal. Nowadays, you try putting a 2-year-old boy in a dress and everyone's gonna think you're trying to regender him. So, but the social mores change. I'm just gonna take a couple of these questions because I actually did a card. I wanna ignore people. So, what is my favorite activity to do with my family?
Do you
Yeah.
want to collect?
Oh, yeah, if anyone else has cards,
Yeah.
please pass them up. Yeah, absolutely.
What percentage?
Can I just say one thing? So that there are people joining us on Zoom.
Oh, yeah,
So
let them talk.
this
to
is the adult formation, and at around 10:25, we'll then shift to the sanctuary for the service. So if you're joining us, please do stay with us. This is the adult formation, and then we'll transition to the sanctuary.
Thank you.
What percentage of the population is trans?
Excellent question. The best research we have right now in terms of people who advertise and claim themselves to be trans is about 1 to 2% of the population. Now, we think that is way under for a couple of reasons. First, people don't feel safe saying that that's what it is. Second, people like me go 44 years of their freaking lives having no clue that they are, and then they finally figure it out halfway through their life. Or, there are people who figured out 75. So there are a lot of people who are just not in a headspace to recognize it in themselves. So the estimates are probably low. Realistically, I think the best mathematical extrapolation I've seen on the topic figures it's probably closer to 4 or 5%, but and that's transgender and non-binary inclusive. Yeah.
What's the definition of trans?
So a transgender person is anyone whose internal sense of their gendered self differs from what their sex assigned at birth is. So again, some non-binary people do not want to identify as trans. That's totally fine. But in definitional terms, a non-binary person would be transgender because their gender sense, I'm not male, I'm not female, I'm that and more, or I'm this other thing over here altogether. So it's really anybody who does not have a sense of themselves as a person that matches the equipment they have between their legs, basically. Now that's not that's a kind of an essentialist approach. We need to have something. The reality is sex itself is not nearly as binary as people like to make it out to be. They'll always argue, well, if you have this part, you're a guy. If you have this part, you're a girl. Not necessarily. There are intersex people. They're small, but they exist. And they say if you're XY, you're a guy. If you're XX, you're a girl. Okay, mostly, but again, not necessarily. There are testosterone-resistant males who have XY chromosomes who develop as females because their bodies don't have the receptors that activate when testosterone is supposed to connect with them, that do things like make your vulva turn inside out and into a penis, make your base grow hair. None of that happens. Their body responds to the minimal amount of estrogen that their testes still produce, because testes do produce a small amount of estrogen, and they mature as women. I've never met one of them myself. They are very rare, but I've also been told that physically, appearance-wise, they're some of the most beautiful women you will ever meet, and they cannot get pregnant and they will never have children. But no conservative straight male who's got red blood and appreciates the female form is going to look at this person and go, well, clearly that's a guy because they got XY chromosomes.
Right.
That proves the lie right there.
Yeah, right.
So sex is not consistent. One of the things that we look at is there are various types of sex and gender expression of where your femininity, masculinity lies. Sex is one, phenotype is another. That's the way you present in your body. So for me, for example, because we're talking about me today, I am genetically male. I have XY chromosomes. I am phenotypically intersex at this point. I have some attributes that are physically male. I am developing some attributes that are physically female that will continue to progress over time. Unless I choose to have elective surgery at some point in my life, I will for the rest of my life be phenotypically intersex. My gendered sense, my identity sense is female. It always has been. So I'm in myself across that spectrum.
Right in the middle.
I average out to the middle. But I don't identify as that. I mean, I don't identify as non-binary and non-gendered, but yes, I have. So the point there though is that trying to ask someone what is your sex, what is your gender? It is a more nuanced question, just definitionally, scientifically, completely apart from the political framing we're putting on top of it. Yeah.
Even somebody finding themselves somewhere in a continuum, you can't quite say the middle or anywhere else, because
Right.
you could have expressions of yourself that
That
are
are
extreme
different
in
places.
different places.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, take, for example, the tomboy,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
That's a
Exactly.
great example.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I will try to get a couple of these questions. I know we got some time here. So what is my favorite activity to do with my family? Honestly, favorite activity. We love playing games together. The girls are in the International Order of Rainbow for Girls, which is a Masonic youth group. They are very trans accepting. If only I had known that 30 years ago and known myself 30 years ago, I could have been one of them. But so we do that. We're going to go that later today. We're involved in the Nutcracker. We have a performance coming up in 2 weeks now, so we do that every year. That's a lot of fun. Yeah. Everyone plays Roblox. The kids like playing Minecraft.
Okay.
Reading books. We used to have more story time than we do now. It's kind of fallen by the wayside after COVID. That was something we enjoyed, but Favorite activity to do by myself. Again, I love to read. I play video games as well. I find that my video gaming has shifted a lot in the last 20 years. I used to like the really deep, intensive, full stories. Takes 12 hours to finish the game. I don't have 12 hours to finish the game anymore. I mean, I do sometimes, but the ones that I actually finish tend to be more like a visual novel where I'm just reading a book that happens to be more interactive versus having to get my reflexes up on the little thumbsticks. And who's got time for that anymore? I've got a PlayStation that's been turned on in 3 years. Um, in what ways did or didn't you feel in school? Not sure if I understand that one. Or in what ways did or I didn't I feel what in school? Does anyone answer that question?
Yeah, no, in school, were you treated any differently? Were your friends,
Okay,
um, did you have boys that were your friends or
okay,
girls? Or
excellent question.
a combination or,
Um,
and were the teachers? And was there any effect or?
Okay. So, yeah, in elementary school, again, I did not identify as transgender. I went to conservative parochial schools, so, we were all together. Um, Mostly I was with boys. I had a couple of best friends who were boys and I switched elementary schools in fifth grade. So from first to fourth grade, there were two different people. And then I had two more, one of them came with and I had two other friends in my new school. But that being said, my best friend when I was in early elementary school was a girl. And I was terribly broken up when she moved away. When I was in kindergarten, or first grade, second grade, very young grade, there was a kindergartner who was a girl who, just like absolutely adored me. I went to her birthday party. Her mom, we really bonded, and then she went to a different school. So I had a little bit of mix of both. As I got older and it became more apparent that boys don't hang out with us. And you're a boy, you got to hang out with the boys. I did that more. But I met my wife in sixth grade. We were very close friends all through sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade. Then we started dating in high school. So I definitely had some connections with both genders, but I also definitely felt that the appropriate relationships were the ones with the boys. And the girls, you kind of have to, well, it's okay, but you're not supposed to do that. So I tended to shy more away from that. Was I treated differently? Again, I didn't identify as transgender, so there's no particular reason my teachers would treat me differently. I was always regarded as a very sensitive boy, and I was very emotional. I would get wounded very easily. There were occasions when I would cry at school, and the teachers would like try to protect me because they knew the boys would be vicious on a boy who's crying. So there was some of that. It's a good question.
I'm gonna have to turn off,
Oh.
leave the Zoom,
Yep.
but we can continue for a little bit.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I just want you to know I'm logging this off
Okay,
so that they can take it over.
sure. When did I know I was Bye.